Hey everybody, welcome back. We just finished watching the last episode of Meltdown 3 Mile Island. I've got 5 more mandarin oranges to peel, so we're going to go ahead and finish those. And I think I've got enough battery left on my ears to finish up the comparison of the docu-series Meltdown 3 Mile Island and reality. I don't know how accurate it is. We seem to have gotten both sides in the docuseries since it was interview style with recreation. So we'll see. We'll see what they say in this video. It's 30 some minutes. Let me find it. I've got to get rid of a lot of stuff on my watch later. So it is 36 minutes, 31 seconds, and it's from Kyle Hill. I don't know who that is. He talks about the drone footage was provided by Atomic Aerials. I don't know who he himself is. He's got over 1 million subscribers. But the title of the video is 3 Mile Island, America's Worst Nuclear Accident. So let's see what happens with this and see if we learn anything new or different.
In the history of the U.S. nuclear industry, a 5 out of 7 on the International Nuclear Events Scale.
Oh, wow.
Though the accident at 3 Mile
I
Island
didn't
left an
realize it was that
indelible,
severe.
an inevitable series of human errors that resulted in a harmless failure. This
Okay, I'm not so sure about this video. A harmless? This video might be a little biased. We'll continue watching.
one was covered by an old, yellowing maintenance tag. No one knows why the second light was missed.
That's why
And
you
the
don't put
emergency
any
core cooling
papers on your
system would kick in,
dashboard.
attempting to flood the overheating
Control
core with
room board.
1,000. Had this single valve closed, had anyone left the emergency cooling systems on, quote, the accident at 3 Mile Island would have remained little more than a minor inconvenience.
Well, and I will say, yes, the event itself was an accident. Nobody purposely was out to make an explosion or anything like that. But it also sounds like they're minimizing so far. Even if it is an accident, it could still be a big deal. And I would say the grievance is how the company and how some of the people dealt with it and talked about it and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if he'll get into all of that though. But he did say communication was part of the big problem, and I agree with that.
A Babcock and Wilcox reactor in Ohio failed in exactly the same way as 3 Mile Island was about to do,
And they
except
mentioned
operators
that
there caught their mistake quickly.
they
A
mentioned
senior
that in the
engineer at Babcock,
docu-series.
over 100 alarms would sound when the reactor started to fail in Pennsylvania, and it was impossible to sort the critical ones from the usual.
Well, and we
Finally,
did hear a
the
lot of
valves that would fail
beeps
at
in the
3 Mile,
beginning.
temperatures inside would reach at least 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, causing.
Wow. I'll back it up just a little bit, but I just got the second warning on my earbuds, so I am not going to be able to finish this in this sitting. So I will finish this later. So you may see me dressed differently. Be back soon. I am finally getting around to finishing up the video that I started that talks about what really happened with 3 Mile Island and everything. I can't remember what all I commented on. I can't even, it's been so long. I had to go back through quite a few videos to find where I left off at. But I only made it about 12 minutes in, so we're going to go ahead and finish watching the rest. We've got about 22 minutes left, 24 minutes left of it, and we'll see what else they say.
Rising radiation readings caused emergency workers to evacuate the on-site auxiliary building. Minutes later,
That's the area we saw them running out of in the docu-series, right?
that figure was actually 100 times higher. and closer to 800 rems per hour, a dose that would exceed the maximum yearly dose limit for civilians.
Wait, why was it read 8 rems an hour? Where were they measuring from? The containment unit, the containment unit protects the outside from everything on the inside. So did they read it on the inside or did they read it outside? That's not clear on what they're trying to say here. Where did they try to measure from? And why was that spot shielded by a lead shield? I just realized I was getting ready to sit back and I went, wait a minute, I think I've got it on the wrong side. So it's fixed. I've got the picture on the correct side now. So now we'll continue.
This is Mike Pinsek in the KBO newsroom. Med-Ed company officials had to shut down their 3 Mile Island nuclear power station unit number 2 this morning after an accident occurred within the plant's turbine system.
So began.
So he didn't get all of that from the call where he got routed to the control room accidentally. He would have had to have gotten that additional information after doing more research, and that information would have had to have come from either public relations or whoever that would have been able to fill him in on those details. I'm not. Somebody's going to have to tell me how reliable this channel is. Some of the stuff is just not making sense. And I don't know if it's because there's stuff left out here and there's stuff left out in the docuseries. And so both of them leaving different stuff out is murky in the waters, making the waters murky, or if it's something else. Things things need to make a certain amount of logical sense. And I feel like we're not getting everything or we're getting a very slanted point of view from one source or another. And so far, I'm feeling like the slanted point of view is coming from this one. So I'm not sure. But if you do know why I'm getting this feeling that I'm getting, please fill me in.
One of the worst PR disasters of all time.
No, I still say Chernobyl is of all time.
During press conferences, official sources of information appeared unprepared, confused, and many times contradictory.
Well, and we did get
The
the
Nuclear Regulatory
contradictory
Commission, now
information
in contact, and so
in the
local and
docuseries.
national. The power plant began discharging slightly radioactive cooling water that had been accumulating in their tanks, now close to overflowing, but without notifying any downstream communities or the press.
Is
The
that
water
why all
was
the dead
harmless.
fish?
I hadn't heard the number 1200, he answered. I don't know why we need to tell you each and everything that we do specifically. End quote. That sentence marked the end of Met-Ed's credibility with the media.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you said the quiet part out loud, but also it goes back to how much information do you give and how much do you not need to give, and kind of go from there. You want to be honest about what's going on, but you don't want to be alarmist, and you don't necessarily want to list like 100 different possibilities either. So, what information do you give? What information do you not give? The way he said that probably was not the best thing, and he needs to learn to spin better.
And then it got worse. The
The bubble.
Friday, thankfully, the 3 Mile Island reactor was rated to withstand the pressure of such a blast, but public relations was not.
Well, and didn't they say that they eventually deduced that the hydrogen bubble was not a threat? But it wasn't right away. It was like a few days to a week later, wasn't it? Something like that. Or a couple of months later.
Could be doing the same thing, could be eating up any oxygen so as to make explosion impossible. Scientists just had to prove that. The officials that went to the private airport hangar to
But there
meet
wasn't
President
enough
Carter,
water.
the total was later established at least 2.5 million curies, a direct measure of radioactive decay.
Is
This
that
amount was
after
less
Madame
than
Curie?
one would be well within the dose someone gets from natural sources over the course of a year. In the 43 years since the meltdown at 3 Mile Island, this fact has been lost, and improper correlation has become conspiracy.
But if we're talking numbers and statistics and all that kind of stuff, if you have an increase of, what did they say, almost 3 times the amount of cancer in the people living in that area compared to outside of the area, then there's something there, right? And I guess that's what he's getting at as far as randomness and chaos and all that kind of stuff. But there's reasons why we have higher insurance if we smoke, or we have higher insurance if we live in a certain area, because of the probabilities based on others who experienced this or that while living in that area or did this activity or whatever it might have been. So there's some type of correlation, bottom line.
Delivered an average possible dose of 8 millirem to residents within 10 miles of the plant. 8 millirem is equivalent to the dose that you get from the minerals in the concrete of your home each year.
Wasn't it 8 millirem that Moscow experienced after Chernobyl? And they were trying to deduce what activity had happened to release that much. Oh, I think they called it millironkin. I don't know if millirem and millironkin are the same thing. Oh, never mind.
There isn't a single peer-reviewed, non-anecdotal report of one significant public health effect after the 3 Mile Island accident.
So I was trying to figure out how to say this. So in the interviews on the show, the one person said that they developed such and such cancer, and it could have been from 3 Mile Island, but it could have also been from something else as well. Maybe it was Rick that was talking about it, and they were a smoker or something like that. I mean, there were other factors involved, and they seemed to be trying to talk level-headed and all that kind of stuff. That being said, the way this guy is talking, I'm just having deja vu of what Russia claims, which is that still only 31 people died from Chernobyl, the Chernobyl explosion, when we know between the people who did not evacuate, or evacuate soon enough, and the people helping with cleanup that were conscripted to help do this and do that and all that kind of stuff, we know the number's higher than that. How to quantify it was the question, because of all these extra variants. But it's like Agent Orange, right? We don't know how many people Agent Orange actually affected, how many soldiers or anything. And that still gets downplayed, right? I want to be a realist and acknowledge there could be lots of different variants, but I don't see how you can necessarily rule it out. Does that make sense?
Whether or not a randomly occurring cancer is being confused with one that is truly caused by something.
Well, and that's
Out
what I
of
was
the
just
2
saying.
million people
You
living within
can't
50
discount
miles of
it
3 Mile
either. You
Island,
can't prove it
we know
didn't
that some
cause it.
320 3 Mile Island did have one very real and measurable effect on public health, however: stress.
Well, I'll agree with that. Just the stress of COVID has increased substance overdose. In our particular area, fentanyl is the big thing because people are using more because of the added stress of not being able to function like we did before COVID, being worried about getting COVID, or not being able to work, or not be able to pay the bills and all this kind of stuff. So we'd had an increase in both suicidal calls and an increase in substance calls. I would even go to say, with the calls I've been dealing with myself, we've even had an increase in our repeat callers who call just to yell and that sort of thing. I would say we've even had an increase in that. So, stress, whether it's from a pandemic, from a nuclear meltdown, from um, loss of work, whatever, stress does take a toll on people's health. People's health. Say it correctly.
The conspiracy theories and anecdotal evidence and
We
anti-nuclear
survived
panic
TMI.
that 3 Mile Island
Now
generated
we
and
joke
still
about we
generates
survived
have
about
likely
all
done
sorts of
more
stuff.
to
I'm
any
not laughing
radiation
about
released
that
in
specifically, but
1979.
just that we use it for
Right
everything nowadays.
ceased operations on September 20th, 2019, citing financial pressures from Pennsylvania's second in the nation natural gas production.
They
In the
said it's still
months
going to take a
following the
while to shut
accident,
down, though.
hundreds
So Pennsylvania has these information billboards. They're not really billboards, but signage up at various locations, usually at historical places, that type of thing. And so that's what caught my eye is I've seen these around State College, Penn State, that area, but I think I've seen them in other places too. But that's mainly where I've seen them. So I was just trying to read it real quick. So I don't know. I mean, I agree with him that you can't say that the event definitely caused this. But at the same time, you also can't say it didn't cause. It's one of those situations where you can't prove it one way or the other. And so to just dismiss it completely just because you can't prove it, I don't know. And I I get it with people hanging on to concepts that are inaccurate or falsehoods or stuff like that. I confront friends all the time about posting stuff on Facebook that I'll say this isn't true, it never happened, and they're like, well, it could easily happen, so I'm leaving it up on my that sort of thing, and I'm like, okay, whatever. um, I get that you don't want to put false claims out there and you don't want to put a negative light on something that never happened. But the fact is, there was a nuclear accident. We won't call it a disaster, but there was a nuclear accident at 3 Mile Island. And there was a possibility that people were in danger while they were trying to figure out the level. And once they did find out that the hydrogen bubble was not going to explode or this or that or it didn't melt down or all this kind of stuff. Actually, I think it did technically melt down, but I don't think it. I'm confused now. I I think it did melt down, but not melt down in the way that we think of when we hear about a nuclear meltdown. But when this, I forget where I was going or what I was saying or whatever. But oh, I was saying, but we do know there was a nuclear accident. We do know that there was uncertainty until they figured out things one way or the other. And with all the contradictions and the misinformation, yeah, no wonder things went to hell in a handbasket. So I had my towel out because I wore a dress for working at the craft store, art store this morning, and I didn't want to get cat fur on it, so I just put my towel on my chair while I waited my 15 minutes till I needed to leave. At any rate, you guys tell me what was accurate, what wasn't accurate, who is being dismissive, who's being overreactive, all that kind of stuff. Basically, Rick is the one who seems to have been the main reason why the show was made. He seemed to me to present things very reasonably. He didn't seem to make extreme comments about anything until you start looking at how the company was trying to scare him and attack him, messed up, you know, the home and all that kind of stuff. That would be more on the extreme side of things. But otherwise, his talking about what happened and what he tried to do and that kind of stuff, he seemed to be talking very level-headed and logical. And he still supports nuclear power as long as people will be upfront and not cut corners and, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Out of everybody, he's probably the one I trusted the most. You guys tell me. Tell me what you know, what you don't know, all that kind of stuff. What do you think about the show, Meltdown, and the information they provided? Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.